All right, still watching Good Morning Nigeria. Before we begin our conversation on Saturday's supplementary elections, let's take this report by Kene Ndulue.
The last has apparently not been heard of the 2023 general elections, as polls in some constituencies are yet to be concluded. Saturday, 15th of April, is yet another date that Nigerians have with the polls. But this time around, it will just be in 2,660 polling units across 185 local government areas of 24 states. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, says the supplementary elections will conclude the governorship, state houses of assembly, senatorial, and House of Representatives elections in constituencies where they were previously suspended due to some reasons, including violence and situations where the votes margin between the winner and the first runner-up is less than cancelled votes. Adamawa and Kebbi states will be in the spotlight as voters determine the next governors of both states. In Adamawa, elections will hold in 69 polling units, while in Kebbi, elections will hold in 142 polling units. For the state's houses of assembly positions, elections will be held for 57 constituencies in 17 states. For senatorial positions, elections will hold in the northern western states of Sokoto, Kebbi, and Zamfara. Additionally, supplementary elections for the House of Representatives will be held for 31 constituencies in 15 states. This time around, it is expected that the electoral umpire and security agencies will be able to tackle the challenges that led to cancellation of results and inconclusive elections. So, how prepared are the relevant agencies for the April 15 supplementary elections? How enthusiastic are the voters to conclude the election process? These and more will be the focus of discussions on this episode of Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you, Ekene, for that background report. Now we have joining us from our Sokoto studio, Ezenwa Nwago. He's the chairman Partners for Electoral Reform and convener Say No Campaign Nigeria. He's a regular on Good Morning Nigeria. It's good to see you, Ezenwa.
And thank you.
Also joining us is Shamsuddin Mukhtar. He's a public commentator. He's joining us from Kebbi. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes. Hello, good morning.
Good morning. And from Adamawa State, we have Dr. John Ngamsa. He's a lecturer, Modibo Adamawa University, Yola. Thank you so much for joining us.
That our guest in Yola studio had my colleague welcoming him to the program. Once again, good morning and welcome to Good Morning Nigeria, Dr. John Ngamsa. I hope that our engineers will do something about that so we can get him reconnected to be able to participate in this program. Gentlemen, you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria for today. Ezenwa Nwago, Chairman Partners for Electoral Reform and convener, as well as Shamsuddin. We are going to have a supplementary election tomorrow. We all know what led to these supplementary elections. The inconclusiveness of elections in some polling units across Nigeria, as well as violence that erupted in those areas during elections. Now, I'm sure you're in Sokoto because you're going to monitor elections. Let's have your view on the preparedness of INEC, if you have an idea, with respect to the supplementary elections tomorrow. How much plans has INEC put in place, if you know, to ensure that the supplementary elections will not witness what happened in the last elections?
Let me first compliment that your beautiful dress. I think it's eye-catching on its own. I would not be able to speak for INEC, but I can glean from interactions, especially coming to Sokoto. The aircraft was filled with, of course, INEC officials, including very top INEC officials who are coming to from Abuja to oversight the elections in Sokoto here. And also from conversations with quite a lot of them, it's clear that the whole of this week have been used to ensure that the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. When that opener was being presented, I just thought in my head, I said, this could just be, these supplementary elections could just be national election for some countries, especially some of them that are neighbors here, the totality of what we are having as our supplementary election. But by and large, the issues around violence, the issues around overvoting, the issues about cancellation would be minimized in such a way that, especially now that the focus will be on just these few polling units. As you know, we have 176,000 polling units across the country, and the supplementary elections is going to be happening in just about 2,000 thereabout polling units. And I think that we can oversight all of that. The security agencies, INEC, and the politicians themselves, because often, Kirian, we have paid a lot of attention on INEC, its preparedness, but we do not actually talk about the politicians, their candidates, and their behavior. INEC does not suppress voters. Voter suppression is not an INEC activity. It is an activity by politicians. Violence is carried out by politicians and their thugs, sometimes in collaboration with unscrupulous INEC officials. But if the security agencies do their work, and especially in Sokoto here, most observer reports that I've poured through since after this election, knowing that I was going to be coming here, showed that at some point security were not very present in many of the polling units, and that gave opportunity for hoodlums to and thugs to play very unsavory role during the election. I think that this election, these supplementary elections, we need to talk a lot more to the politicians, to the security agencies, to be alive to their responsibility, because I do know that INEC officials will be present to conduct elections, but if the security decides to subvert their activity, and if the politicians themselves continue to manifest these negative tendencies, we will not get a different outcome.
Stay with you briefly before we now reach out to Samsudeen. You're in Sokoto, and I'm sure since you got to Sokoto, you've been able to have conversations with people there, and you must have, getting 1 point or two about the people and their expectations from these supplementary elections. What is the mood like from your observation?
I think people are upbeat, but I do know that perhaps for folks that I've talked with, a lot of them are saying that, and even from reports that you can, from desktop analysis, you can find out that the politicians are saying that their members are demoralized because not even one National Assembly election return was made on March 18th. Of the 3 senatorial elections, none was called, and I think 11 constituencies, none was called. So it's worrying that they have to go through that process again, and in some situations that will mean a remobilization. The politicians spent most of yesterday still going to tell their people to wake up, and that it is not done until it is done. But the environment is peaceful from the places that I have moved around. I think the Ramadan also is also contributing to the calmness, but I am hoping and positive that the politicians will not want a situation in which this will be extended beyond this time. I think people will behave themselves and join the rest of the country to celebrate or to go to court, whichever way it falls out on Saturday.
All right, I like it when politicians find it difficult to get voters to vote for them.
Thank you. You didn't compliment Ezenwa's cap.
Oh, cap, okay.
Well on him, you know. He looks like a Sokoto man himself.
Yes, yes. You know, he's in the seat of the caliphate.
Exactly.
So I'm not surprised to see him adorned in that cap.
Yeah.
Okay, let me do the compliments my colleague has advised me to do. Thank you, Ezenwa, for your insight. Now, like I was saying, I'm glad when politicians begin to feel that people are the power.
Yes.
That is not them. You know, they are just
Feel
there
the
to serve. Yes, feel the pinch of it. Now you're struggling to get people to come and vote for you. They have voted. And of course, because of the attitude of some politicians, their vote did not count. Now you are asking them to return again to vote for you. It's a job that they have to do.
Which in the past did not happen.
Did not happen.
There's a new
exactly.
dynamic in the political space now.
Exactly. Now, Shamsuddin Mokhtar, you listened to Ezenwa Wago. He talked about voter suppression, which does not come from INEC officials. He also talked about unscrupulous INEC officials. And I'm sure some of the unscrupulous ones who perhaps were ad hoc staff are still in hiding after the last elections because of the role they played in that election. And the INEC has also said, look, that they're going to deal ruthlessly with those who involve themselves in the rigging of election during the last election. And again, as we talked about demoralized, voters who are not willing again to return to the polling units to vote without their vote making, being part of what will be counted. So let us feel your thoughts, on the situation of the supplementary elections, which of course I'm sure INEC is prepared to carry out tomorrow.
That happened on 18th March, they are up to beat and they are out to make sure that this coming election is free and fair. And yes, of course, we had a situation whereby an electoral officer in one of the ward absconded. And I believe since then the INEC took a lawful decision to deal with that situation and make sure that it did not occur again. And with regards to issue of voters turnout, I believe people still want to vote because the election is not conclusive, and the security agencies have been also on ground to show of force that whatever happens with regards to anything that will destabilize the conduct of the election, they will not take it lightly. So yesterday they move around in the state capital and also across local government capitals. So I don't think there is going to be any violence in Kebbi State. Already it's a state that is not occasioned with such kind of things. So I don't think there is going to be anything different with regards to that trend. The only thing is that the voters turnout, as you know, it is Ramadan period, and the Salah, the Eid al-Fitr is coming, is fast approaching, so they may be engaged in one way or the other in things in order to make it very successful to them. But the politicians have been mobilizing, enlightening, persuading their people to come out and vote. So definitely I think the election in Kebbi State will have a high turnout. as expected, and we don't think there's going to be much violence with regards to that.
Away from the violence, it sort of has become part of the politics in Nigeria. Let me ask you a question as a public commentator. Politics, the dynamics of politics has changed compared to previous elections. What is it like now? The 2023 election has sort of changed the landscape of the politics in Nigeria. What is your observation about that? Why is it becoming so, sort of unusual now, before for politicians to come begging, even after the elections, because it's a supplementary election, to come begging, yes, but now they are going back to ask the people to come out and vote. That didn't used to happen before.
And voting pattern changes. If you look at the presidential election, like in Kebbi State, that was held on 25th February, the major opposition party in the state won 2 senatorial seats. And expectantly, like as in the past, they will have their way in the gubernatorial election, but it changes. So definitely, from what I have observed in this election, voter sophistication has increased, and there is tendency things to go anyway. But politicians, as you know, here, particularly in Kebbi State, they are up and down to see that it goes to their way in one way or the other. But definitely, voter sophistication in Nigeria has changed. Maybe it's made because of this trend of social media, enlightenment, and youth's much involvement in social media and other things like that. But definitely, it's no longer the way it used to be. It's no longer the way it used to be. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Shamsuddin Mukhtar. Let's get to Yola, where we have yet another guest, and I would like to ask him to let us get your own thoughts on the supplementary election coming on tomorrow. And Adamawa is one of the states that will be voting tomorrow. So what is the situation in Adamawa at the moment? Just like my colleague earlier asked, are people in Adamawa enthusiastic about this election tomorrow?
Very much, yes. And I believe from look of things, you will accept with me that Adamawa State is a wonderful terrain of keen political elections, particularly for the governorship. And coming to terms with the idea of the fact that for the first time, we're having a female that is coming on board to give a very good run, that is good enough. And it's a hub and an environment of a lot of gender contentions and whatnot. But that is not also to leave out the fact that we've had a governor who is also quite popular. The two of them, their ratings on the media are quite highlighting and giving, to the extent of the fact that we can accept that it's an interesting environment. We've had it so far so good, and people have participated. And we've now had a situation where the elections is declared inconclusive, and preparations have been made where voting would be held in 69, units, comprising of quite a number of wards, and also affecting some houses of assembly. To it all, I can comfortably tell you that the people have been enthusiastic and they've done their best, and the agencies that have played to do the right thing have also done what is required of them, particularly the security. We've not had any alarming cases of outrageous instances of people being killed anyhow. So there's great hope and optimism that, as open as it is, talking to people and reading the social media, except the normal hypes, by political parties as to who is going to get it right and who will not, I think so far we don't have cases of violent rhetoric. The atmosphere is clear and good enough for the elections to be held, and I can assure you that from what I've monitored so far, the INEC has been able to do a review and they've done some security meetings and reviews also to ascertain that they take charge of what is to be done. But then kudos to the police, the DSS, and the army that have put up their own visible presence and have done that which is right. And I can let you know that most sincerely, in as much as the people of Adamawa State are good enough, they're simple, none of them can also be taken for the right in respect to what they expect. So let's take it and understand at this moment that most sincerely reruns are just ways of trying to make it work, to clear the dark edges of doubts where people will look somehow about what is going on. And it might add to credibility and sensibility of what can actually outline the issues to give transparency, what is required of itself, at least to give our democracy self-evidence. So to my mind, you know, as somebody who observes the media and who goes down also to listen to people talk, I can tell you that the people are ready to compose themselves and to do that which is right.
Yeah, I'm still okay. On follow up.
Yes, just a little follow-up, you know, Modibo. You classified Adamawa as a violence-free environment. Well, the last experience that we had in Adamawa State, and what actually led to the inconclusiveness of the governorship election, there were records of perhaps you can call it pockets of you know, violence here and there, and one of them also led to the death of 2 or 3 persons involving a member of the House of Representatives. Now, you made it clear that a woman, a female contender, you know, come up fine and did a dogged fight in that election, and she's running against an incumbent governor, and she did as well as she did. So Adamawa is a very special case because it's about governorship election. What are you seeing? What are you foreseeing with respect to this election tomorrow, based on the you know, a highly contentious environment in Adamawa at the moment?
I think you have to accept the basic fact that some people have expressed doubts in respect to the reason why it should be inconclusive in the first place. Looking at the vote margin and looking at the placement, you know, of basically what is to be expected from what will come up. The sitting governor, you will understand with me, won with quite over 31,000 votes, and the following votes to come are not likely to be over, you know, given the fact that it's also not likely that the man on seat will not win or make it up. But I think with all sense of seriousness and responsibility, since it's a democratic process, nobody is saying that that should not be done. But you look at it more on the scale of the weighing of the fact that there are other units where members of House of Assembly are also expecting to experience, you know, the rerun and to fulfill the requisite constitutional expectation, at least to give it a sense of fulfillment. You spoke about violence. I tell you that if just what you've had is what just happened, it's quite unfortunate to lose 1 or 2, but the controls have been. And I tell you that the Nigerian democracy, as it is and as we are witnessing, is not sanitized enough to say that such things are not likely to happen, unfortunately, when they do. But in Adamawa State, like I told you, nobody is going to come out to kill himself, except if something outrageous, which is not taken, you know, happens. Then you expect people naturally to react. So to me, I would rather share the optimism and the hope that it's all going to be well. Whoever comes out as a successful winner tomorrow, skies will not fall, the ground will not shift, the river Benue will still be flowing, you know, where it is coming from and heading towards Lokoja and down to the ocean. And we have a responsible, you know, interlinking community of people that will rather live together and do that which is right. But above all, I think it's quite sensible to accept the fact that the man at the helm here, despite the fact that he's the sitting governor, have done his best, you know, in trying to be fair where necessary, to insist on allowing the security forces to do what is expected of them. And I believe that that is just the true agency and expression, of true expectation of what governance should be. That he has shown that maturity. And give it also to the other candidate. I've not heard her bandied violent rhetoric, except in some cases where some things are translated and other things are said. That cannot just go. It's part of the content of what Nigerian democracy is. But I believe the regulating agencies know where this is itching and can be in position to advise. And where necessary, reprimand the politicians to learn to give the essence of why they're there. They're here not to kill, not to maim, but to promote lives, living, and property, and to insist that things get on right. So with clear understanding, I can tell you that whatever is going on, Nigerians can go to sleep, that this thing is going to be free and fair, and there will be an effective declaration if nothing happens to the general content of what is required, to declare.
I'm still going to stay with you before we reach out to Ezenwa and Shamsuddin. Adama was considered a battleground. A woman, as a woman, I was sort of excited. My expectations were high, and I'm sure the people who went to vote, their expectations too was high. It was a battleground, a woman contesting against an incumbent governor like Kieran said, and suddenly that expectation was doused by the inconclusive, by INEC saying the election was inconclusive. Do you detect voter apathy going to the supplementary election?
I share your sentiment for belonging to the tribe of women. I also belong to the tribe of men. But that's not it. Here in Adamawa State, we have a free-flowing state where virtually people do things based on what is right. When you look at the weight of our own political representation all over, they are great and of political significance to the nation. But given that fact, I think nothing is going to happen about apathy. Rather, I can assure you that people are more excited, to ensure that that happens. You don't expect the other party of the governor, particularly the PDP, not to come out and ensure that they get it right. Don't also expect that the APC will not try to put up a fight, no matter how bleak it looks. And I believe that this is going to give us some good clearance space to understand that truly women have content. But it is not also woman on one side. There is also another lady, on the PDP side representing the governor. So we have an invasion of women trying to take over from governorship to assisting the men. So as far as we are concerned in this environment, gender cannot be our problem, but the reality of what should be done. So I'm effectively certain that if INEC can be true to itself, sanitize the process, provide the materials that are required on time, with nothing at least to cast doubt, we're going to have something that is going to sell, and it will be fair, free, and good enough for us to be proud of. Like I said earlier on, reruns are good because they sanitize the content and the process of democracy itself. And if that happens here, and we're ready and we're picking it the way it is, it's going to give us something and somewhere to move. So my lady, if a lady loses, it's not going to be the end of the world for ladies. If somebody wins, he's winning because he's also good. And to my mind, that is the kind of balance of democracy that we should learn to take. Not simply because of gender, whatever it is, or gender excessively, or whatever it is that women feel. It's good to have seen that the woman came out, and there's also another one deputizing the governor around this side. So it's all a show of the women, like I said earlier on. It's going to be fine. I share that optimism, and I pray. And I believe that this particular month of Ramadan, comes with a lot of good things for the Muslims, that attends to the needs of the fact that they are ready to do that which pleases the God they worship, for the good of it. We're going to have sincerity of purpose and achievement that will be fair enough as far as our state is concerned.
Yeah, well spoken, Dr. John Ngamsa, lecturer, Modibo Adama University, Yola, and I'm sure you're a lecturer in the Department of Political Science from the way you are speaking. All right, Ezenawagu, let's return to you once more. Are you concerned about the preponderance of the supplementary elections in Nigeria? This year's election having been hyped as one of the best in terms of preparation, in terms of technology being deployed. To be specific, beavers and other technologies that, of course, should facilitate a smooth election. But we saw some discrepancies here and there. The beavers, in some occasions, failed, and then in some occasions, two people voted without beavers, and what have you. So this election was well prepared. Yet we had all these discrepancies. Are you concerned about that? And how do we forestall such? Because of course, in implementation, we usually have issues of getting things done rightly.
I think data does not support, the prevailing data does not support your view that the beavers didn't do well. The preponderance of reports says that the beavers performed in 98%. 98% of in polling units will be an A plus really. So the prevailing data about beaver is clear, and what that says is that voting and accreditation had gone very well. Is it always very important? Because as at the end of this 2023 election, what is becoming clear is that data is being buried for anecdotes, so it's important that that data is there. There are issues that characterize the March 18 and the February 25th, which were the issues around logistics, opening of polls. The punctuality index for the opening of polls was low. In many places, polls did not open by 8 a.m. as it should. And we did see in pockets of places also where polls had to be extended to the next day. So we need to put that out, that we had clear issues of logistics challenges, and logistics challenges will become perennial for us as a people. And then 2023 was compounded with the coloring of the naira and the challenges that it posed for INEC vendor relationship. So opening of polls was a challenge. So we're expecting that since we have a lesser number of polling units to deploy to, that we will not have that challenge, that INEC will be able to deploy on time, and that INEC officials who have responsibility to make sure that polls open on time, and the security agencies who support them to do that, because you cannot take materials from the rack to the polling unit without the support of the security. So if the security also derelict in that responsibility, it will cause delay in the opening of polls. So there has to be that collaboration with INEC officials and the security to make sure that polls open on time in the polling units where the supplementary elections will hold. The second part is the result management process. And I think that what needs to happen is to send officials who understand the rule and regulation and are able to apply them in terms of margin of lead, what can lead to cancellation, and all of those issues. Those things have to be very clear, because if they are not clear to the returning officers, they can mismanage that component. And that is perhaps what you saw in pockets of places where these concerns are being raised. But what is important is that you have an electoral management body that is willing, ready to remedy the challenges that it confronts. In the middle of an election, the INEC, if you remember, Kirian, had to suspend 2 resident electoral commissioners. And that is a clear message that we are not, that they were not going to condone, malfeasance, any form of malfeasance. We saw now the power of review that INEC has through the Electoral Act 2022 being played out in a way that some results have been reviewed. There were computations that were brought to Abuja, and the ones that could be helped were helped. The Abuja scenario, for instance, when Obiungwa came with that funny results, they had to invite everybody to Abuja. The computation, it was recomputed in Abuja and then taken back to Abuja to announce. So it's very important that we understand what are the basic conditions for which cancellations can be made, and those are clear. Electoral Act has already put that clear, and INEC regulations. If there is overvoting in any place, if the cancellations is over than the margin with which the winner can win, these cancellations will need to happen. And so it's not an emotional thing where you say, oh, many times the lack of understanding of the conditions that necessitate the cancellations is what leads to the outcry that you see. And many times we listen to the politicians more than we listen to the regulations. So if we invest time in understanding the regulations, we'll be able to appreciate when those calls are made and what it is. And I liked what Dr. John talked about. The whole idea of supplementary is to make sure that there is no doubt about winning or losing. That at the end of the day, when people lose, they would have felt that there has been an opportunity to remedy the challenges that perhaps characterize that. And I think that is the mind with which people should embrace the supplementary election. It is part of our constitutional electoral process to have remedies and not just allow what we used to do in the past, where we just simply announce those results and tell people, because anytime you hear inconclusive election, it means that there's an intervention to get things right. If it was in the times when we were not so willing to get things right, there will not be inconclusive. We announce results and then push the burden to the courts. And that is why you have the number of elections that you had in 2019, 2020 rerun of elections, that many of them did not eventually go to the courts. The issues that went to the court were internal issues of the political parties. The election-related issues, many of them did not go to court because of the opportunity for those issues to be remedied through not concluding them in a fiat the way we used to do in the fact. And I think that understanding is important. But more importantly is the issues that characterize our election, the issues around vote buying. In many places, people don't understand, and violence. The challenge that we have is that we have not been able to hold politicians to that point where we put them on the spot and say, look, if, for instance, there is violence in this election, we need to get to the root of who is responsible. In a place like this, in Sokoto, for instance, if you read the reports, many times when people talk about electoral violence, Sokoto does not come out very strongly. But the truth of the matter is that it is very hot here during elections. And if the security agencies don't do what they should do, you will have the reign of thugs. So we need to call out the security agencies to be responsible and tell the politicians also that Atampa that they share, that Cephas that they share, that foreign currencies that are being used to bribe voters, transfers that are being made, can be monitored in a way that those, the electoral kind of things that we see in our elections can be remedied. And it is in the domain of law enforcement to do that. And once they shirk that responsibility, they duck, they hide, and then put INEC in the forefront. And then all of us are tongue-lashing INEC, and then the politicians are having a field day, enjoying the comfort of the things that they throw into our electoral process that diminish all of us.
Well, let me just stay with you. You talked about the basic conditions that necessitated the cancellation of results. I also want to add basic conditions that necessitate complaints here and there. We talked about Beavers. Yes, Beavers performed creditably, no doubt about that. But again, what has led to some cancellations and agitations after election had been that in some places, Beavers was even boycotted in the first place. And there are also areas where there are overvoting, according to those who monitored, or the party agents who monitored the elections. For instance, Enugu State, for instance, and Abia, recall that after the elections, it took almost 2 days extra for the electoral officers to declare elections in those states. They said, look, they were referring this election to Abuja. Abuja didn't conduct the election in Abuja, but they had to refer to Abuja for them to now know what to say and all that. So one could ask, what kind of election arrangement is that when the electoral officer who is supposed to announce a result will resort to Abuja, before he cannot take a decision almost 48 hours after? That is also a condition that could lead to either cancellation or that people overvoted and what have you. And the complaint was that in a particular area, council area in Enugu State, that there was overvoting. 7,000 became 30,000. And the agents are reporting that, shouting it, almost being physical, before the man said, look, I will resort to Abuja and what have you. So what do you have to say to that with respect to the credibility of this election?
We have to look at why did we get the Electoral Act 2022 and those sunshine things that we infused into the Electoral Act, which included the power of review. We had a situation in which people obtained, victory through coercion and intimidation. You knew that from the Imo senatorial election, where the returning officer had clearly said that he was forced under gunpoint to make that return. And so, in reviewing that, the INEC and other partners insisted that we will not have a situation in which returning officers can simply just make a call without the opportunity to review. And a 7 days review option was inserted into the Electoral Act. So when perhaps you see those challenges, imagine Kirian where there was no opportunity for that to happen, for that review to happen in Abuja. So what then happens is that these results are brought to Abuja. The resident electoral officer for that state is invited. The EO, the electoral officer for that very particular place in contention, is invited. And then the political parties and the INEC National Commissioner in charge of those states. So it's not just one person sitting in a room, and in most cases, even the chairman of INEC is in that review. So they all sit down, the ICT department, the operations department, everybody sits down and recalculates those things, and then eventually gets what can look like a result. And where they cannot make that result, they completely cancel it. So if you see in the Enugu that you are talking about, for instance, if you see the raw result from that Enugu, some of the people who are shouting will be going to prison. The challenge is that INEC is not speaking out. INEC is not interested in putting these things in the public domain. And like I said, we listen to the politicians. There is so much interest in listening to the one who is loudest. But the one who is loudest may not necessarily be the right person or the person who is right. Like I said, every time there is an action, it is important to look at the rules, the regulations, and the constitution that guide that process. And the people who have the responsibility to use those documents will bring it and put it side by side. That does not mean, like I said, I did signpost in my opener that there are unscrupulous INEC officials. When they do, who were even before the election, shopping solutions to politicians and telling them what magic they can help them do. But at the end of the day, what is significant is that there is now that power to review. If that power was not there, the outcomes that you will see will be different. Today now, the people of Abia are happy that what they voted is what has stood. Even though there are people who are making claims about how they stood ground, how principled they were, the truth is that the Obingwa result was brought to Abuja and recalculated. And that recalculation is what has brought back the people's vote to count in Abia State. In Enugu State, it is the recalculation that has led to the victory that you have seen. So many times, I have always warned that when politicians speak, always understand that they are interested, many times at the risk of being immodest, in dubious advantage. They like the idea of winning at all cost. And what they do is to invoke sympathy, to draw sympathy to their cause, except you can sit back and then say, what does the rule say? And when you confront them with that rule, you'll be shocked, you'll be amazed that most of the time they may have even succeeded in leading people astray, deceiving them, to now come to a conclusion where at the end of the day they even regret that kind of outburst. But so it must be a knowledge-based intervention. And oftentimes I call on media, especially the media that is the gateway to molding and shaping opinion, to come to terms with these rules and regulation in a way that can at least present the public with what the truth of the matter is, rather than what the politicians are saying.
Okay, thank you, Diduago. That's a very good one there. But just one comment before my colleague takes up. Well, the jubilation was in Abia State after the announcement of the result, but the reverse was the case in Enugu. Just to let you know, because people jubilate when it's instantaneous. There was jubilation in Abia, but there was none in Enugu. That just to let you know that.
Yes, the celebrations, I'm sure there are now places where there's going to be a rerun in those areas. They will now be.
No.
Okay, he's responding. Okay, let's hear him. Let's hear him. He's responding. Okay, let's hear him. Ezra, go ahead.
I think, Kirian, that we also make this thing. The fact that jubilation let's look at the presidential election, for instance. 13 million people voted in a different way. 8 million people voted in a different way. The 8 million people won. 13 million people shouting will run down the 8 million. So if you use that as your gauge as to people are rejoicing or people are not rejoicing, is a non-statistical standpoint, because even the person who won, no matter what you say, has people. If he also unleashes his people to go shouting and jubilating, you will know that they are. So it's not a balanced thing. And when people win election, they move on. They don't stay to shout. They move on. They start thinking about sharing offices and the rest of them. They don't stay. So I think many times this idea of jubilation or no jubilation is neither here nor there. And many of the people who are jubilating can also be mobilized to jubilate or to protest. In Nigeria is a place where there is a protest industry, where you can go hire people to protest for you. You pay them, they come and protest, they shout. So if you use that statistics, you will not be correct. And I think, for me, what happens with our public commentary is that there is a lot of emotions. There is too much emotions in it, and anybody who is not running on that emotion is seen as, an outliner. But the fact is that we must engage these issues from very clear, scientific, unemotional way, so that our people can be enlightened enough to understand that in Abuja, where you live now, if you want to raise 5,000 people now to begin to protest now, you can raise them. Is available. There is a whole industry, and there are protest entrepreneurs that are in that business. They can help you raise people. So that's not an issue. Who is rejoicing or who is shouting does not explain what happened in an election.
People they love to say, this is Nigeria, we love celebrations, we love jubilating, and there's nothing we can do about it. Let me bring in Shamsuddin. Shamsuddin, the public space, like Ezenwa said, is filled with a lot of emotions. You go on the social media, yes, the presidential election is over, we still have supplementary elections coming up, and the war is on the social media now. And Ezenwa raised a lot of issues. You share the same terrain with Zamfara, with Sokoto, and the election is sort of same there. It's almost the same. And, the vote buying, the intimidation, even though you say there's not much violence where you are. But there have been accusations of people coming from neighboring countries also, politicians bringing in people from Niger because you have a border with them to come and vote, as if they are Nigerians. Let me ask you the role of voter education and sensitization in this aspect. Let me have your take on that.
Well, just like Eze Enwere said, the issue of emotions can be persuaded by politicians because there is an industry there ready to be involved if they are engaged with regards to that. So I don't think on my own part also that should be a yardstick that will majorly decide whether election is rigged or not to some extent. And with regards to issue of foreign votes, from where I come from, to be frank, is just an issue that is hype. It is very difficult for any politician to hire people from other part of the country because a state is bounding a certain country, particularly here in Kebbi State, because we know ourselves, and the politician, both the ruling and opposition, they are off to the tax to make sure that they are not rigged. They have party agents, they have supervisors, and they have also native of that place. So it will be very difficult for somebody from other part of the country, from other country, to come and vote in a certain polling unit. Well, I may not rule out some few instances like that, but it's not something majorly that can be taken into consideration. And with regards to issue of social media persuasion or swinging the election, social media, whether we like it or not, it has come to stay. It's global. And I'm sorry to say, you have seen how it's helped one of the presidential aspirants in writing youth to support him, because at the very beginning, many people thought that he did not have structure to contest presidential election, but the outcome surprised many. Well, Kebbi State in general, the only thing that I can say is a menace to our election is issue of our voting, which I'm very surprised to be identified across 20 local government in Kebbi State. Well, on this take, I'm only advising everything has a roots. The INEC staffs in charge of every polling unit should make sure that only the accredited voters are allowed to vote. So when issue of overvoting comes up, it is very surprising that maybe in a certain polling unit, 100 people are accredited and they are expected to vote. They were given ballot paper, and how can it turn to be 200 or something else like that? Because an INEC official in charge of that polling unit should know that immediately he reaches the accredited number on his beaver, then when he starts seeing some people over on that, then it's suspicious. Then he should call security agencies to order, and also party agents. So unless that is the basis of the problem, so the INEC officials should make sure that they pay attention to that. The agents should also be they should pay attention with regards to that. If they come together and do that with the help of security agencies, I don't think there is any problem that we are going to encounter with regards to another inconclusive election. Well, also, I'm happy to let you know that here in Kebbi State, the election material are already in distribution process very early, which I think will facilitate the election to go smoothly, and also the complaints of late delivery of election material will not be had here in Kebbi State. But the only issue is that we cannot rule out in election is vote vying. It's occasion in Africa, not only Nigeria in particular, but if the security agencies can do their job very well, I think these things can be tamed. Thank God, for the first time in this election, we have seen EFCC agents going across polling units in almost every state to monitor these kind of things. To be frank, it has, to a greater extent, reduced the issue of vote vying, but the only thing is that if there is certain connivance with the INEC officials by the politicians, and which are beyond us, which we cannot know, then that is where the issue will be a problem to us. Well, Kebbi State, as I can say, is a hotly contested area, because we have never had this kind of hot election in the 31 years of its existence. Both of the politicians, contestants from APC and PDP, are from Kebbi State, and they finished the same secondary school. So you see, definitely that they know themselves very well. So I don't think there is going to be any run on Saturday. definitely both of them had campaigned vigorously ever since when the election was declared inconclusive, and the media agencies here in Kebbi State are doing their job. The National Orientation Agency is sensitizing and educating voters with regards to issue of this coming election. The issue of sensitization and educating voters, I think, is not mad in any way because of the advent of social media, and there are hardly any village that you cannot find 1 or 3 people without Android, and the transistor radio is also something familiar with us here in this part of the country. So definitely there are a lot of voters education. The only thing that I'm seeing here is that the issue of connivance, if at all it can happen, then definitely there's going to be still a problem. But we pray what had happened in the on 18th March will serve a lesson for both the security agencies, politicians, and also INEC officials to do what is right so that things will not be prolonged. Yeah.
Shamsuddin Mokhtar, a public commentator, reaching us from Kebbi State. I must admit that Kebbi is a relatively peaceful state when it comes to elections.
Yes,
I'm not sure we had all this serious violence and what have you in that state. So I'd like to appreciate that. Well, the mood of a nation determines the level of happiness of that nation's inhabitants or any geographical area. If you recall, in 2015, when Buhari won election, Abuja could not contain people who are jubilating.
Yes.
And it's always spontaneous.
Nobody slept for a week.
It's spontaneous.
Yeah.
You don't plan jubilation. Yeah, but when Nigeria won Atlanta 1996, people went out naked at midnight, walking around the street. It's celebrating. So when things are done right, especially when the public is involved, you have no need to even go for data, because the data, you see the data physically. Okay, we'll take a short break now. When we come back, this conversation will continue. Do stay with us.
SportyBet sponsors coverage of the German Bundesliga.
All right, thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria. And of course, we are looking at tomorrow's supplementary elections as being organized by INEC. And of course, we have our guests, Ezenwa Wagu, Chairman Partners for Electoral Reform and the convener CNO Campaign Nigeria, reaching us from our Sokoto studios, as well as Shamsuddin Mokhtar, a public commentator all the way from Kebbi. And again, Dr. John Ngamsa, a lecturer at the Modibo Adama University, Yola, who I'm going to ask the next question. Dr. Ngamsa, of course, you know all the challenges that led to supplementary elections in Nigeria. Some are beginning to believe that the supplementary election has now become part of our electoral process. In your view, how can this come to an end? Because the first one led to is, we all know, discrepancies and some violence and other constitutive factors that led to inconclusiveness of some elections in Nigeria. So how do we work against supplementary elections in the country?
I think we've already established the fact that it's part of our constitutional expectation to ensure that there is transparency, and where there are things to clear, the necessity calls that we do a rerun. And sometimes the reruns are determined basically for very obvious reasons. Failure in the system, failure in the support system, and failure to analyze and to ensure and to do the review that my brother Ezenwa's been trying to harp over. Now, where these things are found and they're left on like that to continue, it will be like we are a people without a plan, and we are a people that are not moving anywhere, at least to ensure that we get things right. One anticipates that out of sense of responsibility, world over, reviews are to place us in the right perspective. But unfortunately, when you look at the pitfalls and the failures, what I've tried to avoid is to look at the negative side of things all the time and to look at the positives. But when the negatives are trying to overshadow the positives, it's a cause at least for us to consider, as effective in the process of achieving perfection. Now there's something that is not connecting, between the INEC, the security services, the people, and the politicians. Now, when you put it right, like my brother did mention, that you listen more to politicians than you listen, to the rules. And who are the rules? The rules are supposed to be dictated, to be guided, and to be corrected by the security agencies. And that is why they're there. Now, leaving it as an open end, and sometimes we have to make these particular observations to them on need-to-know basis, that for every elections in this country, the security services have their own reports from units to wards, and credible ones that they hold to their own chest. Why is it always there that there is a disconnection between what the total empire gives, and what is truly declared for the people to be certain of? I think these are some of the things we have to learn to put together to insist that the process of our review is brought in very clinical and serious issues that will have to be a bridge between what the security services have and what the empire is having. The empire cannot just go out there and say, yes, we've declared this for social reasons, without at least backing it up with facts and data coming from collaborating agencies that should be part of that particular review. I think except we get there, we're not actually moving ahead. So I blame the fact that at the end of the day, we'll have a situation where people come out, helplessly vote and do that which is right, and left at the mercy of lawyers to determine who becomes the person that takes the show at the end of the day, simply because of technicalities, and other unmentioned things that the common man cannot understand. While in between, there's somebody standing, which is the security, to meet and to ensure that some of these things are done properly. Now, when you look at the example of what obtained in Adamawa State, for instance, and try to gauge the media, a job I do on sport, is to notice that the umpire, the INEC, have had cases of integrity issues, to do with people believing them. And if that is the case, what have they done to ensure that people actually get the right stake and get it right, good enough for them to be aware and enlightened, at least to declare that which is right? Now, I assure you that by the time elections are done, everything is dusted and buried. No proper review that gives the sincere assessment of what is sincerely required for us to make it up. So to my mind, part of what to do, as a matter of solution, is to ensure that some of these agencies, wherever they are, in bits and parts, in separate entities, as fragmented as they are, there should be something joined good enough at governmental level to come out with something that appeals and appears credible. Except that is done, definitely we'll continue to have these repetitive issues. Reruns will continue to be simply because somebody shouts more than expected, and somebody takes on a media that highlights him as if he's a winner, while truly he's not. So as part of our responsibility, I think we should go a little further, both in the media and otherwise, to ensure that we need credible information, good enough at least to allow whoever is coming to judge to do that which is right. Except that is, we'll continue to grapple with this thing for the rest of our democracy.
With you, we've talked about the media. Where do you see the place of the social media in our political sphere? In other countries, social media has been controlled because of the negativity that comes from it, although there are some positive parts, to it. And here, this election was practically battled on the in the social media, and still more information, disinformation is coming out. Where do you see the role of educating the voters, to listen to authentic information and not just go to the social media to get their information and results from the elections itself?
Fortunately or unfortunately, misinformation and disinformation is part of politics. But then where it should be regulated, I think, is where the issue is. Social media has become a monster where most serious nations of the world have been seen to regulate it. And if we are not going to have a force to regulate it so that we can get the right thing, we'll be heading somewhere near anarchy. I can assure you that if we don't control it, just 5 people or 3 people can set this country ablaze simply because they have the control. Now, I don't blame them. I blame those people that are supposed to come there to occupy the space, fulfill it, and make it up. You are media managers just like me, you know, a job I do on my own because I'm also a practicing journalist in some extent, you know, though I teach. What I notice is we in the journalism profession have not come up to own up to the true expectation of what we are supposed to do to occupy and to control the social media effectively. I tell you this on good authority because if you are a keen observer or a watcher of MSNBC, you know, or the CNN or whatever international media you've noticed, you will understand that virtually every reporter and every content giver has media handles across nearly either the Facebook, the Twitter, and other platforms that actually engage. So this should be a deliberate attempt by the owners of the profession itself to take it up and to ensure that you make your presence visible. Even a cameraman in this particular place, as long as the shots and the footage he out there, you know, are important, he has the right by his own organization to allow that particular level to go on so that the images of credible events that occur will not only be staged by somebody else, but once they are seen by credible and standing organizations like the NTA, for instance, you get it right. But that the NTA is not coming up to occupy the social media space. Virtually everything and everybody is there. So what I'm advocating and what I'm sincerely calling for is the fact that we are not going to leave that just to go and check, because it is of paramount importance not only to us here as far as we are indigents, it is of paramount importance to even those that are outside Nigeria to spy on us and to get the information that is not supposed to go. So whether we like it or not, our information resources are very much abundant, open, simple, and easy to take by the outside world. Then for us to have engaged it, cover it, and make it sensible, good enough for us to make capital out of it. So it is my encouragement and sincerity that in as much as this is a problem to us, we must sit down as policymakers, as content givers, as information providers, as security men, to insist on seeing the mainstream of what should be given. If we don't, we're losing it. Even in America, we've had cases where the Twitter even scrambled the social handle of a sitting president. And these are all attempts to kind of control. And if you don't bring such checks, you're not going to get it right. And you continue to expose your nation to all manner of dump and filth and rubbish that people can just sit down and give out. So there must be a clearinghouse. I don't believe in censoring the media. I believe in press freedom. I will fight for it, and I will continue to fight for it. I will support the journalist to do that which is right, to pass information rightly. But where the journalist fails to pick up and to do that which is expected of him, that in itself is an indictment on his conscience. You are allowing the politicians to set up their own small social media handles and overshadow the NTA, for instance, providing fake, and false information. Misinformation and disinformation, they are all critical in determining whether we are going to be secure as a people or not. So let us listen to people that know what they're doing, to those that give the content rightly, and to those that judge. So I don't expect the Ministry of Information at the federal level and orientation and the NTA that is supposed to be the nerve center, to be at the backstage when it comes to championing opinion and giving it right. I believe you need a support program where necessary to get every reporter, every cameraman a level and a license good enough for him to occupy the space so that people can use it at least for reference. So that's what you do before an information comes out. I like your gatekeeping agenda. I like the fact that you set it right. And I like the fact that you talk on topical issues that actually apply to national consciousness and security. NTA, fantastic. But we want to find NTA where we can wake up and make reference to NTA, then we will wake up and make reference to a private organization that has nothing at stake other than the commercial expectation. So I'm speaking this rightly, not only to us in-house, but to the government that is our umpire, to ensure that government comes up and support NTA as a key leading organization of information giving, good enough to command and to direct the social media to take cue from us. I think that is what most nations do, and that is my expectation. Thank you.
Wow.
Well, Dr. John Gamsa, this is a lecture that you have given, a serious lecture, and we salute you for that. As a matter of fact, you made good points, in fact, some of which will form a whole program. We cannot dissect them here because, of course, we're running out of time. Media ownership also plays a role in all of this. You know, the gurus that own the media across Nigeria are politicians. So what do you expect? Let's leave it at that. Thank you once again. And let's go back to Kebbi. We are running out of time now. So, Shamsuddin Mukhtar, be as brief as possible. What are your expectations tomorrow? I know you are a public commentator, but I also want to believe that you have leaning somewhere. You must be supporting one person or the other. So let us have your view about what are your expectations tomorrow in Kebbi State with respect to these supplementary elections.
Expectation with regards to tomorrow's election is that it's going to be peaceful based on the security arrangement I have seen. And but with regards to issue, there are 15 out of 18 registered parties that are going to participate in the tomorrow's election. But two majorly, it's like two horse race between APC candidate Dr. Nasri Idris Orengandu, who is already leading with 45,278 votes, and the second runner-up of PDP, that is retired Major General Aminu Bande. So definitely, if you look at it, the inconclusive election will take place across 20 local governments in the Kebbi State, and in 145 polling units. The registered voters that are expected to participate in that election is 91,000. And as I have mentioned, the leading candidate, which is Dr. Nasri Idris Orongo, is already leading with 45,000 votes. That means the other candidate has a task to bridge this gap and also get something out of 91,000, which in politics we cannot say it is impossible, but the other person leading also will not relent his effort to put a margin so that he will claim victory. So whatever way it goes, I think definitely the election is going to be successful, but the outcome may hardly change. As you know, both parties will work together to ensure they emerge victorious. So if that pressure is pushed, so definitely I think it's just going to be two-way side divide, and when that happens, definitely I don't think the ruling party may likely lose the election, because they have amended the problem that led to their failure in the presidential election. They come together as a house, they resolve, so there is not so much rancor with regards to what had happened in the presidential election with regards to the current gubernatorial election. That is why you had seen a little bit change and expectations were changed. So definitely I think it's going to be a little bit the way it is. I don't think that.
Okay, Shamsuddin, we said, briefly, and I'm sure you're aspiring to be a politician, so you're taking up all the time. We're going to Ezenwa. Please, Ezenwa, in 30 seconds, what are your expectations and how do you think this is going to roll out? In 30 seconds, please, because we've run out of time. I
want to wholly and completely adopt Dr. Ganza's last comments. I align with them. My expectation is that the supplementary elections will go well. Here in Sokoto, there is quite a lot of civil society organizations and even foreign observers who are still around. Foreign partners who are still around to observe this election and imbue some oversight around it, and we expect that politicians and the security agencies and INEC will be up to their responsibility and make sure that people are not disappointed in this supplementary election.
Wago is Chairman Partners for Electoral Reform and convener Say No campaign. He's in Sokoto. Thank you so much for joining us on Good Morning Nigeria. We expect you back in Abuja soon. Okay, we also thank Shamsuddin Mukhtar, public commentator. He's joined us from Kebbi State, and we hope you have a positive outcome in the elections. Dr. John Gamsa, lecturer, Modibo Adama University, Yola, thank you so much for your input and,
and for his lecture this morning.
Lectures are insightful, your contribution to the conversation. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. Wild Sport Update is next.
Victor Osimhen stepped up his recovery from a muscle injury, Napoli announced on Thursday. Osimhen has missed the Panethapi's last 3 games as a result of the injury. The Serie A leaders provided an update on Osimhen's fitness on their official website on Thursday. Osimhen did part of the group work and part individually on the pitch. Read the statement.